No. By the way, if there's a lot of noise in the background, it's because they are building a house right next door. At least they're not hammering anymore, but it's noisy. So, hi. It's about time I did an update. We are now in March of 2020, and I have made some progress with my novel. So as you probably know, I have already completed the first draft of my book. And the next thing that I did was took it out of Ulysses and reformatted it in InDesign. So I've formatted the chapters and paragraphs and the fonts and everything so that it's much easier for me to read and visualize as a novel. And I made the first round of edits, which were the very, very minor things I wanted to change. There were a few gaps, and I had a printed copy which I flagged and highlighted and marked out all the things that I wanted to change, kind of more on a superficial level. Just light editing, and I've made the majority of those changes now. I have also written a synopsis of the book, which I imagine that most people do at the very early stage when they're outlining. I didn't know how to write a synopsis. I already had my outline, but I didn't really, most of it was so much up in my head, and I didn't have anything that really laid out from beginning to end all of the plot points. So it was really helpful having that just to make sure that I'm following the plan, the purpose of the book. But it's really helpful for me to have that now as a really concise outline of the story. That will also help me in the future when I do more editing to know what I need to cut out that doesn't serve the story. Also, potentially what's missing. The next thing that I did was sign up with the New Zealand Society of Authors, NZSA, and they have monthly meetings. They're held on the first Friday of every month. So I went to one a couple of weeks ago, which was the first Friday in March. And I met a lot of really interesting people. The President Mandy Hager spoke. It was great to make new contacts. I'm really trying to immerse myself in the writing community because I know very little about New Zealand authors or the writing process, and I'm opening myself up to all of that now and trying to get involved in research and learn and network. So I did meet some really interesting people, and there was one person in particular who gave me some really helpful advice about my novel and about the storyline. I sent him some samples of my book, and then I also met with him to discuss it further, and he helped to highlight something that has already been on the back of my mind, which is the biggest flaw in my novel. So I was very grateful to have his help and support, as he himself is a prolific author. He has published work in America but doesn't publish in the New Zealand market. So he has a lot of experience and knows how to write thrillers in particular. That's his genre. I think there are two things really. One is that my character is very nice, and he does go through some difficulties in his life, but I feel that originally I wanted to have a protagonist that was very empathetic and kind and thoughtful, particularly because of the genres. Because of the timeline. So he's growing up in 1960s New Zealand, where I feel that there is a lot of the toughen up kind of attitude, particularly towards men. I felt that he would be interesting in his own way. And he's a likable character, but I need to create a little more shade, I think, to his character, a little more complexity. And I know exactly how I want to do it, but it's just going to be a lot of work. And not that that's a problem. This whole book is a lot of work, but it's going to take a lot of figuring out to think about how I can bring in that layer of darkness or complexity to his character. But I'm also very excited because I can visualize it and I know what character trait will be totally appropriate for the storyline, sort of as a yin-yang, the light and the darkness and the darkness and the light. The other main thing that is quite a big issue for the book is that it spans my character's whole life. So it's across multiple decades and it's all chronological, which means that he starts out very happy. He has a happy childhood, sort of very, I don't want to say typical, but quite, I guess, generic in some ways. But then some events occur which flip things upside down. He realizes that things aren't always going to go as planned and people disappear from his life who have always been there for him, and he's trying to just navigate that. And so the story progresses. So it's not all just happy days, because what a boring book that would be. But because of that, and because it's chronological, I'm setting up a lot of backstory in his early life, which set the foundations for meaningful things to happen later on. There's sort of a bit of callback, and we understand why certain things are important to him because of his early years. But when a reader is picking up the book and they read through these first chapters where it's just some kid kind of having a good time with his friends and his loving family, it's just not interesting at all. There's no hook or mystery or inciting incident in the first part that will invest the reader in the characters or the storyline. I think these things happen just a little bit too late, but I kind of needed to have the backstory to know why those things are so important to him or why it matters so much. So that's just me as a new writer going, how do I do this? Anyway, so the book that I've written, I think now really needs to serve as an outline. And I may potentially need to chop up the chronology, consider how I approach the timeline a little differently, or maybe just rework some of the things that happen at the very start of the book. I'm not exactly sure, but I am sure that I will get the guidance that I need to help take my book to the next level. The other thing that I've had to think about is what genre I'm writing in. The person that I met with who gave me the advice, he asked me he asked me firstly whether I just want to write this book and send it out into the world, or whether I actually want to be a career writer. And I do want to be a professional writer, and I do want to write multiple books. His next question was, what am I going to write next? And I have already outlined the book that I want to write next. And I've always kind of thought that I might be writing in a different genre, but I'm realizing now that I may not need to. If I rework this book in the way that I want it to be, it might actually end up being the genre that I want to write in for the rest of the books that I write. The book that I want to write next is a bit more of a mystery with an element of crime, and will have a technology aspect to it. I don't know exactly what you would call that genre. Maybe there is a term for it, or maybe it's just a combination of a few different genres together. But my current project has the potential to fit quite nicely also into that genre. And that's been quite illuminating to me. It's been very helpful and very exciting to think about how I'm going to move forward. I originally had thought that this project, my current novel, I wasn't going to wait till it was perfect. I just wanted to get it out there into the world and share it with my loved ones, my friends, everyone who's shown interest in it. And then I will move on to write something better. That was something that I'd always had in my mind. And yet I'm actually at the perfect stage now where I could make my book the best that I can, the best that I'm capable of, rework it, rewrite it, get it exactly where it needs to be a work of art that I'm really proud of, and it could potentially be the start of my writing career. That would be the ultimate goal. So I see that I have a lot of work ahead of me, where I was originally thinking that maybe I wasn't too far off revising and editing and finalizing this book. In fact, I probably actually need to do a lot of work, maybe ruthlessly cut some parts out, take some things down a different path, or just rework, mold, and shape some areas, some characters, some events, some plot lines, and so on. Overall, I am feeling very positive about everything and very excited and encouraged, and I feel supported by this network I'm growing around me. As I mentioned, it is March of 2020, so I can't gloss over the fact that we are in the midst of a global pandemic. Now, I am from New Zealand, and we are very, very fortunate here. We only have 8 cases that have been fairly well contained. We have no deaths, and potentially we may have contained the spread with our travel restrictions, enforced self-isolation for those who are entering into the country, and with the vigilance and protocol that has been put in place in public areas and events that have been cancelled. One of those events is the Auckland Writers' Festival, which is a real shame. It's very disappointing because it's something that we all look forward to every year, but it's a sign of the times that we're living in right now. At this stage, I know that many countries are practicing complete lockdown, closing bars and restaurants and public areas, and events are cancelled, and some, especially in Europe, are having to completely quarantine. We are very fortunate here in New Zealand that we haven't had to do that. We are obviously taking precautions. I've had one workplace yoga client who has cancelled. They've been advised by their parent company to cancel workplace yoga classes, lunchtime classes, and I completely support that. But I also support another client that I have who is wanting to continue the classes, and that's really just due to the environment where we hold the classes. But I feel a small responsibility in making sure that I am keeping others safe. So I won't let people use my yoga mats. They will need to bring their own and things like that. And I still teach group fitness at 2 gyms. And this morning I taught a class and I had the same number of people turn up as always. And what I really loved about that, and especially talking to them beforehand, was that the gym is their safe place. And I just feel so grateful that they are still able to have that. The gyms do have strict sanitization protocol at the moment, but I have been contacted by a friend in Canada who also teaches group fitness classes, and for her, all the gyms and schools in her area are closed down. For us, it's kind of business as usual, but even if we do manage to contain the virus as we have, I think the biggest impact for us will be economic, and especially in our tourism industry. And I have a family member who works in the tourism industry who is going to be out of work for a bit and needs to find something else to do to make a living. So I think that the long-term repercussions of that are going to be hard. I mean, as a creative person, my primary job is in graphic design and I work from home. I freelance. And then the yoga classes are kind of my secondary job. I am also very lucky that I have plenty of work on to keep me going through this time. And as a generally introverted person, I can think of nothing better than just staying home and writing my book. It's currently a luxury that I can even think that, because things are really tough at the moment in so many different ways. My only wish for people is that they keep themselves safe and well, and try and be sensible, not panicking, but being vigilant and looking out for others, checking in on people that we know are affected by this, and try and weather the storm. I finally got my hands on Stephen King's book on writing. I've been wanting to read it for a long time. I've had it on hold at the library, and when it did come in, I was not able to read it at the time, and so I actually have to give it back on Thursday, and today is Tuesday, so I'm 1/3 through it, so I'm going to try and finish it in the next couple of days, because I can't get an extension on it because somebody else is waiting for it. This book has been particularly well loved. All I can say is that I am enjoying it so far. The first half is more of a kind of memoir. He calls it a CV, and it's anecdotes from his life, from his childhood and his life. And then halfway through, it's on writing. So that section is more about his writing process. He's a very, very good storyteller. There's a part here that I liked. He was talking about somebody who reviewed his work when he was in college. The person who reviewed his work cut out a lot of what he'd written. And he said, I only took out the bad parts, most of it's pretty good. And Stephen said, I know, meaning both things. Yes, most of it was good. Okay, anyway, serviceable. And yes, he had only taken out the bad parts. This guy said, if that's true, you'll never have to work for a living. You can do this instead. Do I have to explain any of these marks? No. When you write a story, you're telling yourself the story. When you rewrite, your main job is taking out all the things that are not the story. So that's where I feel like I'm at right now with my book. There are many things that I like that I've written in my book, but if they don't serve the story, they're going to have to go, and I will have to get ruthless about it. Now, I do have more things that I want to share, but I will save them for the next video. Lastly, I have set myself up on Twitter again. I haven't used Twitter for many years, and even when I did, I didn't actually use it. I never really got into it. It didn't suit me at the time. My Twitter handle is very creative and original, Alyssa_writes. And it does seem to be a really good place to share in with the writing community. I found some of my old favorites again, but the majority of who I'm following now are writers, and the majority of people who are following me are writers. So it's a really good way to connect with people who are helpful, like-minded, and creating this community. I only did it less than a week ago, I think. And on Friday, I came across a hashtag that I saw that a lot of people were using, and they had these short little stories with the hashtag at the bottom. The hashtag was RāmereShorts, which was a little writing competition that they do every Friday. So I looked it up and found out more about it, and it's organised by what is formerly known as the New Zealand Book Council, but is now known as Read NZ Te Pau Muramura. And it's been going since 2010, 10 years later. At 9 a.m, they deliver a set of 6 words, and participants craft them into a small short story or poem. A winner is chosen at the end of every day, and they say who used the words in the most original and clever way, who made us laugh or cry or shake our head. But the trick is that you have to keep within the character limit of 140 characters. Even though Twitter has increased its character count, you still have to keep it within the 140. So I came across this at 4:30 p.m. and at 5 p.m. they close it for the day and do the judging. Hey, Beavers. Just to interject more, My poor little kitty has been sick. Look, she's all shaved. She had to have an ultrasound because she's not been eating and she hasn't been very well. So she had to have this ultrasound and had to have all of her fur shaved. Poor little girlie. So I didn't really give myself much of a chance here, but it was my first one. So on Friday, the words that we had to use were watch, or, some, put, best, whole with a W. And it took me about an hour to write it, and I couldn't get what I wrote down to 140 characters. I think it sits at about 152 or something. So I was late and I didn't fit within the criteria, but I still submitted it anyway, just for, well, partly because I spent an hour on it and I wasn't going to waste that time with what I'd come up with. But I just wanted to see what it was like to actually put out something creative that you've written. I haven't really done that very much, and I'd like to do more of these writing exercises just to challenge my creative writing mind. So this is what I wrote using those 6 words. 4 days. Under my watch, my gaze. The best test is to press your crest. Ready or not, slow and steady. Curse you, I put my thumb right through. Some blow, a whole avocado. It was really interesting seeing what other people had written as well. I'm going to try and do more of these little challenges using these prompts just for the fun of it. If you're on Twitter, let me know your Twitter handle. Just pop it in the comments below, and I'd love to follow you and grow my writing community. And I'll be back with another update soon. See ya.